please give it up for Kerry Cohen.
So it's true, I have a memoir called Loose Girl, a memoir of promiscuity, and that really forms the basis for the story I'm going to tell you tonight. The memoir is it's really about how I slept with many, many men and had sexual experiences with many, many men as I was growing up in an effort to get attention from them and to feel worthwhile as a person, and how that really fucked up my life in many ways. But also that story was mostly about how I chose to have those sexual experiences out of shame, and how I chose to have sexual experiences that would lead me towards shame. Not because the sex itself was shameful, not at all. It's because of the ways in which the culture sort of made me feel, the ways in which I was treated afterward, and then ultimately how I felt about myself because I was choosing it for the wrong reasons, really. So I wrote that memoir. It came out, has done quite well, and because I think many people can relate to it. So, but it has not made me any money. So therefore, or it's made me some money, but not enough to live. So back in about like 2009, the book came out in 2008, back around 2009, 2010, I needed a job. Economy, as we all know, has gone to hell. And I teach. So I got myself a job teaching at a for-profit college here in town. Not my ideal teaching job, but you know what? I was psyched to have a job, and you know, it was great. I was teaching about 5 classes. I loved it all. The students were actually quite wonderful. I was really enjoying teaching. I love teaching. It's really fun. And you know, I admit there were some like natural flirtations that happened here and there. They were perfectly innocent. I had no interest in really sleeping with any of those students, although, you know, it was fun sometimes to fantasize. But it was, everything was great. Everything was going great. And I had made sure that the administration there knew about my book because I knew about the dangers of my sort of literary past and what might, you know, that this was a for-profit college, and I needed them to understand that this was part of being a writer, that it didn't mean that I was like a messed up whore, but anymore. But I, you know, that this was, you know, I was very serious about this job, and I was taking it very seriously. So everything was going great. About 6 months into that job, I come into the school, and there's an elevator that goes up, and this feels relevant because like you go into an elevator and you're closed in, and then you get up and the doors open, and like everything was different. I walked out into the hallway, and all of the students were like looking at me and looking me up and down. There was like whispering going on, you know, like in high school where like the girls are like. So I knew something was going on. Like I didn't know what, and I was freaking out. And I went and I taught my first class, and the students were not being very their normal sort of respectfulness. There was just like, there was a weird vibe. There was a lot of whispering, a lot of chattering when they were supposed to be doing their work. And a lot of the men, especially of the students, were like, you know, checking me out up and down in that way that feels really disrespectful, and making little comments to each other. So I did not know what was happening, and I was running it over my mind, like, what could this be? And now I admit there had been a few things that had happened over the course of those 6 months that were not like perfect. Like, so for instance, we were not allowed to ever pick up our phones during the time that we were in those classes and, you know, teaching. And sometimes while they were working, I might like pick up my phone and like write a text or something, and a student had gone and told on me. And so I had to go and see the dean about this. It was very high school. Another time, a student had complained because a student had, I had asked him to, if he was gonna be my next class, as well as the class he was in now, and he was gonna be heading down to the store to get some coffee. I was like, oh, would you pick me up a coffee too? And I gave him a couple dollars, and when he came back, he brought me the coffee, and students saw that and went and complained that I was giving A's to male students who were bringing me coffee. I mean, just there was like a few things that had happened where I was like, oh God, like what is it now? But still, you know, I had no idea what it was. And so classes were going on during this day, and everything was like, it was every single class, the students were just being really weird and like whispering and checking me out and being kind of nasty. Well, finally, it was like the last class of the day, and I only taught like 3 per day. And this student comes up to me who had been a perfectly good student. It was the end of the class, and he comes over to me and he goes, "Did you really do those things you said you did in that video?" And I was like, oh, fuck. So here's what those students saw. And I didn't know this. I had done this a long time ago. So I'll tell you a little bit about what this video was. So I gave a reading. Okay, I gave a reading in New York City at an event about. It was an essay I'd written about a video I had made, and the video I had made was on the tail end of my sexless marriage, 4.5 years of no sex. Thank you very much. After being the loose girl. Then I became the tight girl. Right after that, I made this video, and it was basically a porn video. I made a porn video for this guy in Iraq, who, for the purposes of this talk, I'll call him Steve, but his real name was John. And he, they couldn't get porn in Iraq, so I made him a personal porn. I really liked the guy. He was a fellow writer. He was a cool guy. He was like, we had a good friendship, and there was a lot of romance in there, but he was also married. And all I did was made him a porn. So I told the story about making this porn, and the point of this essay that I wrote about having done that video was that after a sexless marriage, after having struggled all my life with the shame that I had around my behavior around sex, that I had like rediscovered myself as a sexual person without that shame. That I had that doing that video for that guy in Iraq, I had become whole again as a sexual person, and that finally I had sort of like released that shame from myself, because I was doing this even though I thought I was kind of doing it for this guy. It turned out I was doing it for me, because really it was me that I was looking at in that camera and seeing that I was actually this beautiful sexual person who could be in touch with that. However, there's some things in the reading that I spoke about that were I was aware once that guy came up to me what they'd also heard. So they'd also heard about how I'd gone shopping for like the biggest dildo I'd ever bought in my life before doing the video that I did for him. And then also they heard this. They heard a couple of these. I brought some samples from the reading that I'd done. So I had written things like this. He sent me a couple of photos displaying his endowments, which were quite impressive, enough so that I wanted more. Joking, I asked, "Got any cum shots?" He replied, "I can make you anything you want, but I was hoping you'd provide me with a little inspiration." I paused a moment, considering it. What do I get in return? You get a video of me jacking off to your video. So they heard that. They also heard this. That night, I set up my bedroom for the show. I lit a few candles. I draped some solid colored fabric around the bed. I took off my clothes and put on a thong, and then I pressed record. I picked up my new friend and gave it the best blowjob I've ever given in my life. Then I had great sex with it. So this is the kind of stuff that they saw me saying. So I went home that night, like, devastated. Like, oh God, what have I done? What's gonna happen? I looked at the video again of me reading, and I saw, all those things, and I was really freaked out. So the next day, I went to work, and I did my best to try to stay, control of the classroom, but it was just like, it was done. Like, there was one kid in class, what was really upsetting for me and kind of brought up some of that shame was that I'd been quite attracted to this guy. I thought he was like extremely good looking. He was like this really, really handsome black man who was in one of the classes. And he was during class, but this is like an example of how low I had fallen. He was Skyping some friend during the class and like turned it to face me so that his friend could see, like, that's her. And that's when I knew that it was over. Like, I had just been so destroyed as a teacher in this school. So, not surprisingly, got a message from the dean to come and see her. And so I went up there to see the dean. By the time I got there, I was literally like, I'd never cried at a workplace before, but I was crying. I was feeling really, really upset and shamed. And she said, So we've gotten some complaints. There's a video up there of you giving a reading, and she said, and I have to tell you, I went and looked at that reading, and I must say that I don't know who you are outside of this school, and you can be whoever you want to be. You know, in other words, you know, I don't judge, but like, of course, I'm judging you, and I would never have anything to do with that. But I'm going to tell you right now that that is not okay, and you have lost all respect from our students, which also meant, of course, that she had no respect for me. And while she was talking, all those old feelings were coming up, of feeling ashamed, and for having been a sexual creature, you know, as a woman, and having really like used sex in a way that that brought me some power, but it was different now. It wasn't about power, about like, you know, fake power. It was like real power. Like this was like my literary power. This was like this had given me power as a woman now, and as a person coming off my divorce. And but from her, it was not that. It was shame. And so I cried, and she said, you need to take down that video. You need to take down the reading. And I said, okay. And I went home that night, and I did. I took it down, which I will always regret, because, you know, she missed the point, obviously, and she had so taken me back to that place of shame. And it only took me about a week of going back to school to work and teaching, and seeing the lack of respect from the students, and understanding what had happened there and how I had taken down that video, to understand how much I had sort of circled back to who I had been. And so all I needed to do really was quit that job. And that's what I did, and I never looked back again. Thank you.